We should be pragmatic, real, raw in our discussions about this current political moment. But we can't be hopeless. And I'm seeing out there a lot of hopelessness within the pro-democracy movement. And I feel that stress, it feeling like we took some steps backwards in recent weeks. But we got hit with some news that is sort of unexpected, but very exciting in what it means about the potential of democracy prevailing. And just before getting into this, I have a couple different things to walk through with you. We did a segment yesterday talking about the strong economic figures and how that is something that is not good for the Trump narrative, because the Trump narrative relies on crises on all fronts, and he has to be the person who can come in and strongman fix it, right? So things getting better, going well, does not help the Trump MAGA narrative. And today, a lot of people watch very closely the 538 forecast they do based on these simulations. They run these election simulations to see who's going to win the electoral college. And as of where things stand now, Biden wins 51 times out of 100, and Trump wins 49 times out of 100. This is something that a bunch of people have been talking about. I'll show you just since this screenshot was being spread around. The numbers have changed a little bit. But again, a very closely watched forecast, this 538 forecast. They describe it as 538 using polling, economic, and demographic data to explore likely election outcomes. And now, over the last few hours, it shifted to Biden wins 50 times out of 100, Trump wins 49 times out of 100. So the fact that Biden's slightly favored at this moment after being it being the opposite, where Trump was slightly favored just a couple days ago, am I bringing this to you to go, woo, we win, or Trump's gonna lose? No. I'd still say, in light of recent events, we have a lot going against us. And it's not exactly relaxing to imagine election day. Okay, so that remains the same. That also isn't to say, see any of the concerns being expressed about the candidacy of Biden and discussions that seemingly are ongoing. I'll get to some of that in just a second about the future of that candidacy, that all of that's totally illegitimate because of this. I'm also not saying that. What I'm saying is, if Biden sticks to what he's saying now, which is despite concerns around competency, fitness, he's going to stay at the top of the ticket. I think some people are assuming if that happens, it means, well, all hope is lost. And that is not the case. We need negative motivation, right? We're afraid of the prospect of Trump winning, and you can feel sort of terrified by things going against you into caring enough to go vote. But we need hope too, and that hope is fact-based in this moment. You also have this from Newsweek. The proportion of black voters in 7 key battleground states who would vote for Joe Biden against Donald Trump has surged by 15 points, according to a new survey for Black PAC. Between February and June, backing for Biden went from 50% to 65% if the election for president were held today, and the pro-Trump share declined from 8% to 7%. So that's a massive blow to, yes, the political prospects for MAGA, but also the narrative-based storyline that's going out right now in much of right-wing media. They're really getting a lot of play out of all of these black voters are abandoning Trump or abandoning Biden in favor of Trump. And that doesn't actually seem to be playing out, at least according to that poll. And it's going in the opposite direction there. Then if we just take a zoomed out look at the polls nationally right now, you saw Trump get a lead all the way up to 2.3 percentage points, but that is starting to drop a little bit down to 1.9 percentage points. So after the debate, you saw a surge in Trump's direction, at least the last couple of days. Now it's not just flatlining, but coming down a little bit. Trump still narrowly leading in the national polls. Again, that's a different thing than the 538 forecast based on more than just those polls. And then you can see for the first time in a while, Biden in this Marist College NPR PBS NewsHour poll, you have Biden leading just a little bit, and then Trump leading in a lot of recent polls as well. To be fair, NPR reports the race for presidency remains statistically tied despite President Biden's dismal debate performance 2 weeks ago. And it goes through just how essentially, based on their polling, this has not changed the race that much. We also have talked about, if you haven't been watching every single segment, I can't go through everything again every single time, otherwise the segments would be too long and boring, but we have talked about the battleground state polling that looks just really bad, a huge shift in Trump's direction, and then other swing state polling that looks like it didn't change too much. So it's a very confusing set of facts for sure, given that everyone's just trying to investigate and figure out what has been the impact of this disastrous news cycle for Biden. And my takeaway is not relating to the candidacy concerns. Is there someone stronger? We're having that conversation separately. Not related to woohoo, it's going to be easy now. My big takeaway is clearly all hope's not lost. And between now and November, if it's Biden or if it's somebody else, but right now, if it's Biden, then we can do the work to make sure that Trump loses, democracy prevails, and common sense governance continues. That's what I can say for sure based on what I've been looking into. And then you had this after Biden's press conference where admittedly, don't gotta ignore this, he had two major gaffes, saying President Putin instead of Zelensky, and then correcting himself, and saying, Vice President Trump, meaning to say Kamala Harris. Given what the concerns are, that's a really bad thing to happen. But also, after the press conference, you had a focus group, or at least a focus group, saying this.
My question for you, you weren't decided before this happened if you should stay in the race. How do you feel now after watching this news conference?
Relieved, and I think he should stay in.
So your opinion's changed? From not sure to he should stay in?
Yes.
Okay. And how about you? How do you feel? You weren't sure. How do you feel now?
Same. I think he's the logical choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you thought he should pass the torch. How do you feel right now?
I still believe he should pass the torch.
And why do you say that?
I think he conveyed more defensiveness versus confidence, and I think we are really craving to be able to be confident about the candidate that we carry into the November election.
So again, I have respected my audience handling of this moment. Love you all. But out there in the less awesome spaces of the internet, you've had a lot of people being vicious to each other within the pro-democracy movement, pretending like if you're on the last lady's side, you're evil, or if you're on the first two ladies' side, you're evil. None of that's going on in our community. Love to see it, because we understand both arguments can come from a place of good faith and logical cases can be made for them. But 2 out of the 3 of the ones I just showed you watched the press conference and went, actually, okay, I was undecided. Maybe he should stay in the race. And I think that took them looking past what were the widely publicized gaffes, and those are fine to talk about, but seeing through the communication mistakes and struggles that were present, a profound understanding of the issues. That I don't think you can deny when you watch that long press conference and the questions Biden was answering, and trying to imagine Trump having the type of grasp of these sorts of foreign policy issues that Biden does is completely wild. Trump couldn't possibly, and that is something those focus group members at least were able to resonate with. Then Fed Chair Jerome Powell here on the economy is bolstering what we talked about yesterday.
So I'm in lots and lots of international discussions as part of my job, and the story for the last 2 years has been just how exceptional the performance of the U.S. economy has been, and that's not a secret. Clearly the U.S. economy has performed very well compared to sort of our advanced economy colleagues.
Is there any country in the world with a central bank, any advanced economy that's performing better?
Better as a central bank?
Any economy that's an advanced economy that has a central bank that performs better than us?
None comes to mind. As I think of the majors, the answer would be no.
Okay, thank you.
And something we've been following oh so very closely that much of other parts of the media spectrum don't seem to put as much attention on, but comparing ourselves post-pandemic to the other economies we compare ourselves to has led me to believe clearly the governance that we've seen has been effective, or at least the handling of the economy in getting us out of that crisis and then remaining strong once we recovered. And that message has been heard around the world. People resonate with that. Jerome Powell saying in these meetings with international leaders, they're wowed by our economic performance, given all of the extra negative conditions that were present because of the pandemic. And then you have Spectrum News reporting that President Joe Biden said both Israel and Hamas have agreed to the framework of a multi-stage proposal he laid out in May that aims to ultimately facilitate an end to the now 9-month-old fighting in Gaza, while emphasizing there is still more work to do. So that is another positive development. Again, just because I know new people watch every day, I will say, I'm concerned and uncomfortable in a lot of the recent moments that have been widely covered relating to Biden and behind the scenes reporting. All of that, I see it, I get it. As someone who has touted the success of his presidency a lot, I also hear those concerns. And I can see now, as I'm looking into it, sort of playing this out, I can see how, as a pro-democracy movement, we could unite around Kamala Harris and get her across the finish line in defeating Trump. But right now, Biden's staying in the race. And as long as that's the case, there are some positive signs amid a lot of negativity, and hope is not lost. And that's my message in this segment. But because I do want to make sure that I'm giving you all the information, big news on the candidacy has been made recently. Just today, actually, Forbes reports 4 House Democrats have urged President Joe Biden to end his 2024 presidential bid since his closely watched press conference Thursday night, bringing the total number of congressional defectors to 20. And that, of course, combined with a bunch of just prominent names in politics. And then this is just scary. Business Insider said, I mean, scary if Biden stays in the race and this continues, sort of scary. Business Insider reports donors told a leading Biden super PAC that they're pausing around $90 million of promised funds unless the president steps aside, 2 sources told the New York Times. And that's a lot of money, obviously. So it's not to say everything's resolved, going great, and there aren't going to be real issues if Biden stays in the race. But again, if he does, there is a path to victory, and that path to victory becomes more and more clear as more people learn about Trump's vision for what a second term would look like for him. One of the things he's trying to distance himself from, that nobody buys his distancing, is Project 2025, an agenda for how he would govern. And we went through already a bunch of the most dystopian parts of this plan. Here, I just want to focus on something that's less salacious, so it won't be talked about as much, but I just want to add it to your awareness. Millions of low and middle class households, CBS News reports, would likely face significantly higher taxes under the Project 2025 proposals. He estimated that a middle class family with 2 children and an annual income of $100,000 would pay $2,600 in additional federal income tax if they faced a 15% flat tax on their income due to the loss of the 10% and 12% tax brackets. If the child tax credit were also eliminated, they would pay an additional $6,600 compared with today's tax system, Duke said. So their adjustments to our tax code, them saying it makes the tax code simpler, which in a very literal sense, it would make it simpler, but it would be just 2 tax brackets, a flat rate of 15% if you're making below $168,000 per year, and then 30% for people earning above that. And the implications, as so often is the case with these Republican proposals, end up putting a larger tax burden on low and middle income earners and saves high income earners a lot of money. Let me know what you thought of all of that. Again, this was sort of our updating on a bunch of stuff segment, and I want to hear what you thought in the comments. If you want to get an extra episode of the show daily, you can do so by clicking the join button below.